I've seen some videos from you in Australia, India, Switzerland, and what always strikes me is that you're able, like in an hour's time, to give a sketch of the human condition. But to me, it's always a very rough sketch, and maybe today we could go into some part of this a bit more deeper.
Right.
I told you I'm a clinical psychologist, therapist, and sexologist, and in that capacity, I talk with a lot of people about things that are very vital to them and to me as well, relationships, sexuality, and everything that is concerned with that. What struck me in one of the videos I saw of you, and maybe we can start from there, was that you said, which was shocking in a way, but very clear in another way, that we people sort of exploit each other. Like there's an exchange of, if you give me something, I'll give you something. And in a way, I think that's very basic, so maybe we could go into that today.
That's a fact, but we do not want to accept that as a fact, because it destroys the very myth that there is something marvelous, extraordinary about the human relationships. We are not honest, decorous, and decent enough to admit that all relationships are built on the foundation of what do I get out of this relationship. It is mutual gratification. If that is absent there, to keep that relationships for whatever reasons, for social reasons or for other reasons, children, property, security, and all this, are part and parcel of the whole the relationship business that we are all trying to maintain. And when that fails, when that doesn't give us what we really want out of this relationship, we superimpose on that what we call love. So it is just not possible to have any relationship on any basis except on this. But the whole culture, for its own reasons, has created this situation for us. It has created the value system. But the most important thing is the security, and then the possessiveness. I want to possess the other individual. When my hold is becoming weaker, for various other reasons, it wears out after a while. You see, you cannot maintain this lovey-dovey relationship that the relationship started between man and woman all the time, because it is based on two fundamental images that we create for ourselves. So the actual relationship between two individuals is the relationship between the two images. But your image is changing, and the image of the other person involved in your relationship also is changing constantly. But the demand to keep it in the same basis, the same image level, is just not possible. So when everything else fails, we use this final, the last card in the pack, and marvelous romantic ideations around that thing called love. To me, love implies two. Wherever there is a division there, whether it is within you or without you, that relationship cannot last long. The relationships are formed, and then the relationships are dissolved, and both of those things happen in the same frame. It's in the same frame. So that is really the problem. To me, see, you may think that I'm a very crude man, but if anybody talks to me about love, it is to me a four-letter word, misspelled. That's the only basic relationship between a man and a woman. I go to the extent of saying that it is a social problem for us. You see what kind of a relationship you should have. In those days, even amongst Brahmins, it is not possible to marry unless you belong to the same subdivision there. And it was worse than racial stuff in those countries, even in those highly advanced civilizations. So the idea of maintaining the, I don't know what word we use, you see, not they call it, I just don't get the right word, you see, to maintain the family traditions. What is tradition after all? It is the unwillingness to change with the changing things. When we are forced by the conditions, then we change a little, but yet, you see, the change is not in the interest of the mechanism of our thinking. I'm saying a lot of things. And I go to the extent of saying, you see, unfortunately, we have blown this business of sex out of proportion. It is just a simple biological need of this living organism. This body is interested in only two things: survival and to reproduce one life. It's not interested in anything. But it has become a tremendous problem because the basic biological functioning of the body we have turned that, you see, into a pleasure moment. See, if there is no thought, there is no sex at all. And the second problem here is it is not just the sex act that is important, you see, the build-up that is there, the romantic structure that we have built around it, the love play, this, that, and the other, is based on the build-up, you know. So, if you look at, say, a beautiful woman, for example, the moment I say that it is a woman, we have created a problem there. A beautiful woman. And then it is more pleasurable to hold her hand than just to look at the beautiful woman. It's more pleasurable to embrace her. It's more pleasurable to kiss her, so on and on and on. And this is the build-up that is really the problem. Here, the build-up is totally absent. Because there is no way, you see, this can be focused on any particular object. The moment you say that, you see, she's a beautiful woman, that is a cultural thing. Something happens there, that beautiful one opens her mouth, and for all you know, she has the ugliest teeth that any woman can have, let alone the beautiful woman. So you see, that has moved from there to here. And then something else, you see, her movements. So this is constantly changing. There is no way you can maintain this build-up. So what is there is only the physical attraction that you can never be free from. Never be free from. All those people, the saints, they are tortured with this to control that, you see. It is a natural attraction, but that natural attraction is something which you should not be condemned, you see. So you don't tell yourself that you are a God man, that you are a realized man, that you are an enlightened man, that you are a saint, and that you should not think these thoughts. See, that's really the problem there. They are not honest enough to admit that. So if a saint comes to me, or one who practices celibacy, I am very ruthless with them. You see, do you really mean to say that you never have wet dreams, I ask you? And the second thing is to practice the celibacy in the name of your spiritual pursuit is a crime against nature. If you are impotent, or for some reason, if the woman happens to be a barren woman, that's a different story. But why you see this religious thinking of man emphasize this denial of sex as a means to his spiritual attainments? You see, because that's the way you can control people. That's the most powerful drive.
By making sex dirty.
Dirty.
You want to be pure, and if you want to be pure, you
yes,
have to...
sex is a very natural thing. You see, if you don't have sex, it probably goes through your urine, or it goes out. The sex glands have to function. If they don't function normally, you are an abnormal individual. But we are not ready to accept the fact, because it undermines this is a parenthetical clause, I'm using a very complex sentences. It undermines the very foundation of human culture, that we are not just biological beings, that we are something more than that. You see, whether it is spiritual thinking or an economic thinking, you know, you say you are just not an economic being controlled by the laws of supply and demand, but actually in the field of economics we are controlled by the supply and demand. And in the political field, the raw excessive politicalism controls our thinking. So, but we are not ready to accept the basic fundamental fact that this is just a biological being. And all that is happening there is the hormonal activity. And it is pure and simple chemistry. That is all that is there. So if there is any problem there, you see, it is too much for me to tell you, because you are a sex therapist and all that kind of a thing. It cannot be helped in any other way other than trying to change the chemistry of the whole thing. You know, I think our whole thinking has to be put on a different track. You see, I don't know. See, I'm just suggesting. I may be wrong. I'm not competent enough. You see.
What track would that be?
It's all chemical. It's all chemical. You see, as they say that the desires are hormones, and the whole ethical culture that we have created through centuries to control the behavior of human being is false. So desire cannot be false. Anything that is happening within this organism cannot be false.
Let me see if I get you straight.
I don't know if I made myself clear.
I think so. I'm just checking. Are you saying that there will always be sexual desire even without thought? Because
without thought there is no sex at all.
There's no sex at all.
At all.
So where there's sexual...
Without thought there is nothing there. So thought is memory. Thought is, I don't know where, you see, this people made fun of me when I said, you see, these glands are inactive there. You see, one of the most important glands there is the thymus gland. And when I discuss this subject with some physiologists or the doctors, you know, they made fun of me. It's a dead thing. It's inactive. If it is activated through any external means, it will be an abnormal situation. But you know that that's the most important gland, the feelings, which are not thoughts, operate there. You see, that is involved from the thymus. You see, the medical technology ignored that for a very long time. Any abnormal condition of that is considered to be an abnormality, and they tried, you see, to treat it as an abnormal condition. But when you reach the adolescent age, it becomes inactive. You see, then your feelings are controlled by the other ideas. You see,
more by culture than by biology.
Than by natural biology. Feeling is, you see, if you trip there, and you don't actually trip along with the man who trips over, but the whole of your being is involved in the tripping over. You see, that is the feeling that I'm talking about. But all the other feelings are emotions, you see, thought. The distinction between feeling and thought is not really something to...
It's artificial.
It is very artificially created. It is cultural, you know. Heart is more important than the head and all that absolute poppycock. But when once you see this kind of a disturbance takes place in the hormonal balance of the human body through this catastrophe, through this calamity, through whatever you want to call it, and then this is not only this is activated, but also all the other glands are activated, and the pineal and pituitary glands are also activated. See, people ask me, why don't you submit yourself to medical technology, and why you are making these assertions? I am not selling these things, but what I have against the medical technology is that you want to understand the functioning of these things. When once you have some idea how they are functioning, how the activation of these things will help mankind, you are not going to use it for the benefit of mankind.
And that's the reason why you're not interested in...
Not interested in that. If you don't say, accept what I am saying, it's fine with me. If you reject, somebody there talked to physicians, said, oh, this fellow is talking some absolute rubbish. Now volumes have been written on the subject of thymus in America. So I'm not claiming any special knowledge of these things, because the feeling, you see, is quite different from the feeling induced by thoughts, So the sex has to be put in its proper place as one of the natural functionings of the body. And it is mainly, solely and wholly for the purpose of producing, reproducing, recreating something like this. It has no other place in the functioning of the body.
If one isn't interested in procreating, there is no function to sexuality?
No, there is no way you can go back now, because the thought always interferes with that, and so it has become a pleasure movement. I am not saying anything against it. You see, I go to the extent of telling people, you see, if it is possible for you to have sex with your mother, you see, without any problem, psychological or spiritual problem, that will put an end to the sex. You see, the whole thing is built on your ideas. You see, I'm not advocating incest as a way of life. For this, there is no such thing as incest at all. It is the guilt problem, it is the psychological problem, it is the religious problem. If it is possible for a human being to have sex without a second thought, whether it is your sister, daughter, mother, without any regret, without anything, the sex is finished. It falls into its proper. I'm not suggesting that as a therapy. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that. The other thing is,
but you mean without the build-up?
Without the build-up.
Throw that away.
What I'm trying to say is it's just not possible to have sex with your wife or with your mother or with anybody.
So sex goes out the door?
Sex goes out of the door. And then what you are left with is the natural functioning of the sex glands. If it is not used, all this talk of these spiritual teachers talking about it grows into your, urdhva. Don't believe all that nonsense, Whether you are a saint or a god man, or a sinner, you see, if it is not used, it goes out through your urine, or you see, you may not have dreams, you see, wet dreams, but still it goes.
The body is still the body, and it still goes on functioning.
Yeah. There seems to be an abnormal functioning here. What do you call estrogen is in the case of, what is it, I'm not very familiar with.
These are the female hormones.
The female hormones. See, but as they say, that is for the first few days or weeks, the sex is not differentiated in the, so somewhere along the line, it is decided by
one becomes male.
One becomes male. So it goes back into that stage where it is neither male nor female. You see, it is not an androgynous thing that they talk about. That's too silly.
It's more psychological.
It's more psychological. It's more psychological. So we have to revise all our ideas about this whole business of sex. You see, we give tremendous importance to sex. And so the denial became such an obsession with the people, you see, and then they moved away from that in India. They created this tantric sex, you see. That was the highest pleasure that the human beings could have. You see, the sex was the highest. That was the reason why they created, probably even in Brazil, I don't know, in some other countries, the coupling of male and female organs. You see, you have in India all that nonsense, temples. And then the bull, the temple for a bull, virility. They were admired and worshipped. So then it went to the other extreme. See, so sex indulgence became a spiritual pursuit for them, and they talked of achieving their spiritual goals, enlightenment through sex, and called it a tantric sex. Whether it is tantric sex or ordinary sex, or you go and have sex with a prostitute there, it's all the same. You see.
But I can understand why people would be interested in sex as a means to attain so-called spirituality, because at the moment of intense sexual involvement, and at the actual moment of orgasm, people have the feeling like they're not there anymore.
It's temporary.
It's just
Very
a
temporary.
flash of a second.
Not even flash of a second. You see, because it cannot be absent. You see, even there, the division cannot be absent because of this extreme. You see, even in great pain, you see, you are not there. You see, what happens if the body goes through unbearable pain and you become unconscious? It is there that if the body has any chance of taking care of that pain, and then you see, or otherwise, what's the problem?
But would we agree that at the moment of orgasm, which is just a flash of a second,
The fact
that the person isn't there, that there's
the
no ego, there's no...
The person was very much there
Before.
Before, you see, even at that, the peak sex experience moment, because that has already been captured by your memory. You see, otherwise you have no way of experiencing that peak moment. See, if that peak moment remained as a peak moment, that would be the end of sex. That would be the end of everything.
You remember it as a peak moment, but you can't remember the actual feeling.
That is not important. The fact that you remember that as a peak moment and you want to repeat that over and over again implies that it has already become part of this experiencing structure.
And then it's the ego operating.
Yes, then you see you want that always and then extend it longer and longer and longer. This is one of the most idiotic things to do. I read some time ago, long time ago, that they tortured a woman, you see, to have continuous orgasm for half an hour or 1 hour. But why go through that to torture? You see, well, what for? What do you prove that way? You see, that is also, you see, the fad of all these people, you know, to make that last longer. It is just a fraction, you see, of a second, whether it is in the female or the male. It really, I don't know, you are a therapist, probably you know a lot more than I do, but I think that there is really no basis for that kind of a thing to extend the orgasm longer and longer and longer. And that becomes an obsession with these women. If they don't have, so their sex acts become very futile.
And it becomes like an addiction as well.
It's like any other addiction, like any other addiction. See, these I observed myself, you know, I did not learn these things from anybody, but in my own life, you see. And I told my wife, this is something, it doesn't matter, you see, I always talk of these things. Every time my wife talked of love and this, that, and other nonsense, what is it that is the basis of our relationship? Sex, you see. You know, I denied sex for myself 25 years pursuing all these things, and then suddenly realized